Hello and welcome to the Watson Weekend, your weekly dose of e-commerce entertainment. I'm your host, Rick Watson.
It's Jessica Liseski. We are back again. It's Friday, and you know what time it is?
Friday.
Friday. TF. Do people even say that anymore?
I
still
don't.
do.
Yeah, I think we're gonna get canceled again.
Okay. I've been waiting for it to go down.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my kids are out of school now, and so it truly is going to be so fun. It has kicked off officially, and like all good parents, my kids are playing Fortnite. So, rocking it already.
That's great. That sounds like a terrific plan. You parent of the
Yeah.
year award. Parent of the year.
Poi, it's basically my middle name now. So here we go.
I know. I love it. This week, we are going to be on the marketing angle. So if marketing is your love language, we are here for you. In particular, the 4 topics we're going to be talking about is, we promised you. So we're going to talk about a death to ROAS, return on ad spend. Is it the future of marketing, or has it destroyed marketing in creativity and applying accounting and financial metrics to marketing? Second is attribution. How should it change? Should it change at all? Should it change every week? Third, where does the customer sit in all this? How can you be true to your customer while you're overanalyzing your metrics? And then finally, how do the algorithms fit in? Should they drive your strategy? Should they be outputs of your strategy? Where do they fit in? What do you think about
And
that?
the AI part of that. So so this is just kind of our take on it. We have got the very talented, distinguished, and also jet setting Erik Huberman here as well. And so he's the CEO of Hawke Media. We'll introduce him in a bit. He's going to help us unpack all of this, but we really want to understand too what you're interested in. So drop us some comments and let us know if we're hitting the mark with the topics that Rick just outlined, or if there's more you want to dive into. We're going to try our best to unpack all of this, but we probably could do this series for like 4 weeks in a row. I think there's going to be so much to talk about. So we're excited. But Rick, you want to hit us with a couple of things that happened today in history?
Today in history. I'm going to start with the geek side because I'm a techie, as everyone knows. In 1951, the first commercial computer, the UNIVAC 1, enters service at the Census Bureau. I mean, it seems like we don't care about the census anymore. Do we still do a census in America?
Yeah, I think we do, but I think it probably enters into like the fake news realm. I don't know.
Right.
I don't think I've been a homeowner now for like 20 some years. I've never received a census thing in the mail. What does that say? Am I just off the grid? They don't know
You're not,
who I am.
you're not counted. You're
I
not
don't
counted.
count.
You don't count.
That tracks.
Yeah. The next one, which is also in the spirit of one of our big marketing topics today in creativity, Cristiano Ronaldo sponsors Coke bottles from his press table in 2021 at the European Championships. And he removes the Coke bottles from the table. And it destroys the share price for $4 billion on one day.
Yikes. That's a pretty steep decline there.
That's an issue. So
that's a problem.
It's an issue. So those are our facts around today. If you have other things that you would like to talk about, as Jess said, please type them in the comments below if you're on LinkedIn or YouTube. We're going to introduce Erik in a bit. I think first, we're going to get into the headline hangover, and we're going to start with where else? Meme stocks. GameStop, or should I say GameStonk. The company is cashing in on quote unquote dumb money. This is actually kind of genius. I don't know if it's like collusion or insider trading, but we all know, like, have seen the stories and the Netflix documentary Dumb Money, where sort of one guy in his basement who drinks wine or rosé or something.
Beer.
He drinks
only beer. It's beer.
Only beer. And he posts memes on Reddit, and he shows his portfolio, and he basically tells thousands of people when to buy stocks.
Yeah.
Well, apparently GameStop is using that to its advantage. So they are selling $75 million million shares to create $2 billion in cash. Like, is this what corporate responsibility has devolved into?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is also the second time they've done it. They also took advantage of
Terrible.
that in 2021. They basically paid down debts. They then generated $50 million in interest alone on the cash that they generated that helped again just kind of keep the company afloat. And so the thing that I thought was interesting is Roy and Kitty, which is his code name, just reiterated his belief as of last Friday in the CEO's vision. He's like, look, it's all about the transformation. The cash pile is growing. And in the meantime, it's rumored he's also liquidated some of his stake. Liquidated. I can't say that. Why can I not say that word? But he's gotten rid of some of his stuff, essentially.
Gone.
And
It's gone.
but he kind of had to, because he had this like date of June 21st where he essentially had to do something with his position or people were going to step in. So his stocks, they were expiring.
It's wild. And you mentioned about Mayflowers, but it's already June. So are they still with us?
Yeah. So, we're talking about Mayflowers because we had some April showers in our indexes. I'm about to throw a bunch of acronyms, which is why I said you'll be on an acronym overload after the story. You had the CPI and the PPI, which came out this week. Your CPI is your consumer price index. Your PPI is your producer price index.
Okay.
The CPI data is what we track to see how are just the general consumer goods and services tracking in terms of inflation. We had some good news momentum here because it was the first time in 2 years that the CPI was flat month over month. So that was a good thing. Physical goods declined negative 1.7%. Shelter is still sticky. So it's basically what we pay for homes. And that's not a surprise. And that's the largest impact on the CPI index. Other good news was monthly food at home. Inflation's been negative or at zero for the past 4 months. So things are getting a little bit cheaper. Groceries are starting to scale back. We've seen more and more retailers talking about price cuts and grocers talking about price cuts. I think the quote of the day from this is economists were like doing some chest bumps or like fist pumps or whatever they do behind the scenes, that it reinforced the disinflationary narrative that inflation is almost back in the bottle. That is Mark Zandi, the chief economist at Moody's. So on the PPI side, from a wholesale perspective, it was held back by a 0.8% decrease in the final demand good prices. And so the other news was their goods and services in the open market declined 0.2%, which it doesn't sound like a lot, but that was the most in 7 months. So we just take these little basis points and we celebrate them. And so here's the latest, Rick, is there's now this debate on, are we going to get the 2 or the 1 rate cut? Do you think we get a twofer this year? What do you think?
It doesn't seem like we're gonna get a twofer. I would bet against the 2-4. And speaking of sticky, shelter, what gets sticky for me is eating gummy bears and not cleaning up after myself. That seems to be the things that are sticky. Look, I still think we're in like this economy pontification mode here. My groceries are still 40% more expensive than 4 years ago. Period.
True.
End of discussion. And so, the Fed, like, I think a lot of companies have, we've talked about the age of efficiency here because the cost of capital has increased. We still have a lot of companies on the sideline. At some point, the Fed will cause the recession. It's just a fact. The question is just a when. So,
well, the vibe session is still alive and well, as we talked about last week. So good stuff. So you've got another some besties coming together in the world of returns. Walk us through what's going down.
Yeah. So 2 players in the return markets. One is Loop and second is Happy Returns. Now they're entering BFF territory. If you look at what does it mean? Loop has a returns portal. It helps buyers when they have something that they don't want anymore, which seems to be like half of the stuff I buy in the house. The box goes in, the box goes out. And so Happy Returns, where they do it, that they have these returns bars where you can bring a product back without a box, and they will look at it and decide like, no soup for you, or they're like, yeah, we will take it.
Be faster,
And then
test.
Loop provides the online portal, which helps buyers have a frictionless return experience and help them actually not just send it back, but decide to like, can you get money back sooner? Or do you want to exchange it for something else in inventory? So it helps retailers be more efficient with their cash and inventory by saying like, okay, maybe we don't want to give this buyer back cash. Maybe they want a different size or they want a different product and we could just send that different product at the same time. So essentially, they are now these solutions, rather than competing, are now recommending each other. So that's the big news in the partnership, which we are excited to, I guess, reinforce here on the program because we're also besties with both of these guys.
Yeah. Hey, look, I will say I have a happy returns customer.
Yes.
It is very seamless, and I do think what they've done with the retailers and trying to at least bring foot traffic in. So I don't frequent Paper Source that often, but that was a stop in my happy returns journey. Picked up a little stationery on the side and, there you go. So, or a little gift. There's some cute stuff in there, but here we go. So it'll be interesting to see how this transcends the old returns world.
No, for sure. And Miles had some UK translations of these terms because some of there are different players in different markets, but Loop for sure is one of the dominant returns players in the Shopify ecosystem. People remember that there used to be Returnly, which got acquired by Affirm, and then they ain't here no more. They gone.
Shut down city. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, we had a lot of good feedback on our Stars Are Just Like Us and the David Beckham story. So we're bringing that back in a different way because Zendaya is partnering with On Running, and it sounds like it's going to be more than just she's a celebrity endorsing their product. She's actually been a big fan of On for a long time, as outlined in the press release. She wears them on sets. She wears them when she's traveling. She runs with her dog and she wears her Ons. So she's not planning to just be a face with the shoe. She's actually going to help reimagine, collaborate on designs, future collections. And I kind of had a throwback to their investor day. This is On's investor day in October 2023, when their co-CEO said their vision is to be the most premium global sportswear brand. They're going to expand into new categories, markets, turn double-digit revenue between 2023 and 2026. That means their sales will be $4 billion. They're operating on 60% gross margins. And our producer, Vinny, is going to throw up a slide here because they actually have been taking share, both On and Hoka, from Nike and Adidas. So it's pretty clear that if you look at this, like from 2019 to 2022, which was the latest data I could find on the market share, Nike's losing, Adidas is losing, Hoka, and even New Balance is taking a bit of share there. So it'll be interesting to see now, does On make a bigger splash in like the fashion side of the sneaker market, not just the running side?
Yeah, that's exciting. I mean, what I want to see is like Zendaya's outfit in Dune 2, where she repatriates the water. I want to see On release that product too.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, the good news is Zendaya and I are now like this because I wear Ons. So
I love it. Yeah, no, that's great. No, super appreciate those headline hangover stories. I think this, as you mentioned, this kind of leads us into our introduction of Erik Huberman. Just to remind all of you guys who we're talking about here, Erik Huberman is the king in waiting of barbecue, a USA Today best-selling author. He's a friend, close personal friend, and has interviewed Anthony Anderson and Cedric the Entertainer, loves Five Guys burgers. And oh, by the way, he's the founder of Hawke Media, which, to jog your memory, has generated over $3 billion in revenue, assisted over 4,000 brands, won 90 awards. Here he is, the man, the myth, the legend, the con participant, Erik Huberman.
Hey,
good to see you guys. So In and Out, by the way, not Five Guys. Gotta clarify
that. Fact checkers. Where are our fact checkers?
Yeah, I might have missed that one. Pretty sure Vinny did that on purpose. I'm actually hosting a barbecue on Monday in Cannes, so that'll be fun.
That's amazing.
Yeah, well, I'm sure my invites in the mail
Oh,
somewhere.
it's there. If you
here.
want to come out to France,
Okay.
you have an invite to the barbecue.
We love
All
it.
right. Yeah, it's great. Well, Erik, last time we had you on the show, I said I felt like we could talk for at least another hour or more. So we're so glad to have you back and help us unpack this topic. And before we get into it, we wanted to do a real flashback because we missed one more on this day story.
Oh.
So I think Rick's going to help set the scene because it's June 14th, 1970, one of the biggest moments in sports, maybe not to Americans, but for sure our European crowd. So Rick, bring us home because we want to have a little homage to what good marketing used to look like.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have our show like one of the greatest soccer players ever. And if you ever seen any, if you weren't alive during these times, if you ever seen the documentaries, I would encourage you to watch some of his play, which is unbelievable. Pele is one of the greatest soccer/football players, depending on your geography at all times. We're gonna take you back to June 14th, 1970. At the time, there was the FIFA World Cup, Brazil versus Peru. Clearly, Pele was on the Brazilian team, and Adidas was the official sport kit sponsor of the entire sport. Almost like you see like Nike on today's event, and then they're like maybe like today they're battling with Adidas. At the time, it was Adidas and Puma. Adidas was the incumbent, had all the money and all the players and the league locked up, and Puma was the challenger. And so they decided that how are we going to do something creative to get ourselves known and out there? And let's kind of flow through some of these slides and see sort of what happened. What you have is essentially the shoe tying that was heard around the world. What did they do? They took the best player in football history and paid him $120,000 to stage a shoe tying. Of course, it's not just shoe tying. Like the people in the stands, they don't necessarily know what's going on. But at home, what do they do when the greatest player in the world does anything? They zoom in on it. And so they zoom in on his Puma shoes, which are, first of all, not regulation shoes. They're not Adidas. And as a result, Puma, so if you go, this is sort of the end result of it, which is like he signs his own shoes, and Puma gets huge recognition from it and publicity. He secured $120K from tying your shoes. That, to me, that's not a bad day of work. That would be equivalent to $850,000 today, which I haven't seen such a marketing stunt in some time. I think Adidas was super upset. So like, let's get into ROAS. Like, this is like guerrilla marketing at its finest. And so I think this is a stretch was like the balance between ROAS, which is like a very financially driven metric, like how efficient is your marketing? Are is your landing page efficient? Is your ad spend returning what you thought it would be, versus sort of creativity and guerrilla tactics and word of mouth and just getting the world to notice who you are, like,
and taking a risk, right?
And taking a risk. So I'm going to kick off the conversation that way, and kick it over to you, Erik and Jess, for how does this factor into the state of marketing today?
You're saying just taking a risk in general and trying things out. I think it's, and we're going to get into this a lot more. The idea of companies have become so caught up in Excel sheets with their marketing that they just don't take a step back. And it's funny because I'm super data driven. We like very much performance.
You have to be.
You have to be. And I'm not saying, let's not swing the other way either, but people have forgot. And I think this is actually where the challenges in e-commerce came the past 2 years, and a lot of the challenges in brands in general the past 2 years, where they go, oh, we're not performing, and it's probably just the economy or whatever, and they brush it off. And it's like, no, like there's a very easy stat here. Consumer discretionary spending has not declined. It's not inflation. I'm sorry, it's not. It's like, if you're a discount seller, I can guess that inflation's affecting you. But for most discretionary spending online, those aren't people that are hyper affected by inflation. And so we're seeing the stats. Deloitte just released a study in May about this, that it's actually not affecting consumer spending that much. So what happened was it got harder to track all the results of your marketing because all the tracking systems got killed by iOS 14. And so since then, everyone just kind of got way more like, we just want to see, like, if there's no result, we're not doing it. And it's like, you have to take your step back and go, my view of any business that I've built has always been, if I can't show a bunch of potential customers my company and get customers in a very profitable way, like, the problem isn't my marketing, the problem is my business. And I think most big companies that have done well have that same approach, which is why you see them doing things like Super Bowl ads. It's like, if I can't go show millions of people my company and get a bump for it, then my company's not worth anything. So I think, but to get that attention when you do things like that, you have to do these, edgy, creative things.
Yeah. So let's unpack that a little bit, because it goes back to our first question that Rick posed at the beginning. We have ROAS, we have attribution, we have, the 30 days, whatever your latency metrics are that you assign. Where are we missing the customer? It sounds like you talked about we're so data driven, and you have to be. You can't just be throwing bad money around. But where are we just disconnected from the customer, their journey, what they care about, when we get so engrossed in these metrics?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think people forget to take a step back, metaphorically. I think it's it's getting engrossed in the metrics. It's you end up diving into these individual metrics. You look at, we'll talk about it, but ROAS, and you go, oh, well, my ROAS isn't performing like it would. And it's like, well, hold on. Like, your ROAS doesn't, and we'll talk about that in more detail, but that doesn't actually matter. Like, what's your lifetime value of a customer? What is the word of mouth and the K factor? Because if your individual ROAS on an individual customer, even if it's not break even, if that person brings 3 other customers with them, there's all these other factors. And then what is the long tail? Because there's also the sales cycle. We talked about this a lot last time. People don't buy the first time they see an ad, or sometimes within the first month. And you now can't track that either. And Ferrari talks about, a 35-year-old customer has made it starting at 7.
Wow.
They spend decades. That's why there's Ferrari toys and blah, 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 and all these other things. They know that they need to get someone hooked on it when they're little kids, so they aspire to buy that car when they make money. And it's literally decades of sales. And so they're not talking about ROAS.
Right. Yeah. So how do you guys shake it out? Where do you get people to break out of the data? What starts to click for them that they've got to think about it differently?
We do our best. The problem is when we make these statements, the certain people, a lot of people think that we're biased, because of course you don't want to be held responsible to monthly numbers. It's like, no, well, that's not accurate. We actually do care about your success. But it really comes down, it's funny, we're getting into it, so I'll say it, page 108 of our book, The Hawke Method, is ROAS is BS. Yes. So what it is you have to show people that listen, the other side of this is important, which is you do need to make money. You need work. You can't have a 30-year sales cycle at a new business like that. I can't invest money now and know that in 30 years I should make that money. That doesn't work. So you have to make money now, but now doesn't have to be this week. And so we just have open conversations. We talk about MER, which at least gets us the month or the quarter. We
can you say what MER is, just in case we got some folks?
Rating. So it's just what percentage of your revenue are you spending on marketing is kind of, or media. That's what we look at, that number, because that allows, that's another kind of shortcut to allow you to take a step back. But at the end of the day, your cost to acquire a customer versus their lifetime value of a customer is the number you should be looking at. CAC to LTV, it's what every private equity firm will tell you, which are in the business of buying and building businesses. So that, knowing they're looking at it right. And that is the number that matters most. And you just have to have the working capital and the cash flow to live through those LTVs. But assuming you have a solid CAC to LTV, you're a good business if you can manage through those periods. Because if it takes 3 years to assume your LTV, again, but you make 10 times your money, then that's great. You just have to get to there while you have all the operating costs. And so knowing those numbers becomes really important. And then knowing your contribution margin, because what does that incremental marketing spend actually do to improve your revenue versus, we had this with a client a couple months ago that was, really frustrating, but it was, they were telling me how, they have to cut media because their fixed expenses are too high, meaning they're operational expenses. I'm like, no. You need to cut your operational expenses.
Get your expenses down. Yeah.
Right. Money, but cutting your media is just going to make this a worse problem. again, they don't.
Death spiral.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you see this, or like you see people who forget the value of the top of the funnel because they're so focused on having ROI like above 4 or 5 or like, or, you know, whatever that number is. And the only channels are going to get that kind of effectiveness are things where someone's already kind of decided that they're going to buy.
Yeah.
But you forget things like unaided awareness
Yeah.
and, you know,
No,
word of mouth and things like this that are not, can't be measured in that point of view.
No, I talked to a very big company the other day that we're talking to that, you know, everybody would know that had cut their brand spend for a year, and the amount they cut their spend is the amount of revenue they declined from it. And it's like, and now, by the way, that's revenue. So like they did make a little more profit by doing that,
right?
But they now are doing this, and it's like, oh, oops, like, and they knew, like they're very savvy people. This is a very successful company, but they're like, oh, we got to start that up again. Like we probably, you know, it was someone, you know, senior that didn't understand, a CFO or whoever it was, made that decision. The CMO was like, yeah, okay. And now he's like, now we're going to go back into this. So I think brand spend, top of the funnel spend, again, it goes back to, this is how, like when I built my activewear brand before Hawke, the first big marketing campaign we did was, let's go give every blogger, because there was no Instagram influencer then, blogger an outfit for free. It's $20 is what our cost. And my thesis was, you know, we sell them for 50. So like, let's just round numbers. Let's just say we need to double our, you know, we need to have every blogger that we give a free outfit to. If they can sell one outfit, we will make money. Like we'll make a little money. So let's go do that. And we sent out 1,000 outfits, spent 20 grand. And my thesis was, if all these like mommy bloggers and fitness bloggers, if on average, them posting about our product can't get us one customer, our business is dead. Has nothing to do with the campaign.
Yeah.
Like,
We should
our
be
product,
here.
our product is terrible because I mean, if you watch like one of the, like, I'm not a chef, but I play one on TV. I learned how to be one during the pandemic, like everyone else. The first thing, if you're Gordon Ramsay, if you're turning around a restaurant, like he goes in and tastes the food, like this is shite. And then what does he do? He'll make his own recipes and he'll stand on the corner and watch the customer. Like, do people like eating your food? And to your point, like what you did with your 20K was like, if these people don't like the product, then this business isn't going to work anyway. And I need to do something new. I need to change my product. I don't need to market more.
Yep, exactly. And at the end of the day, marketing a good product's pretty easy. Marketing a bad product is impossible.
Right. Product market fit. That's why that beauty of a gym exists, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So talking about, you know, MER, and I think we talked about last time, you know, in this attribution, and maybe we'll bridge to attribution, because I know there's a lot of times people are like, how do I think about my attribution model? How often should it change? But you mentioned like you should allocate 100% to each channel. Is that kind of how you'd think about that? How do you advise both small to medium businesses and larger businesses to think about MER, and should it change?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting into media mix modeling and that side of things, and how that, and I think that attribution drives me nuts. I think it's like, again, that's the 100% to everything. It's if someone clicks a Google ad, clicks a Instagram ad, and then clicks an email and then buys something, you attribute all three 100%. It took all three to get them there.
Right.
So attribution's, I think, always been really dumb. Media mix modeling, trying to figure out the model of where is the incremental lift. If I spend a little more on Facebook, that for everything else, that's where it's at. And we've put some of that into Hawke AI, our data tool. We're doing a lot of that now. That's a lot more complex. It's very individualized, but that also comes in when you're a bigger business. A small business doesn't need to do media mix.
They don't have to do that.
No.
Yeah.
Just grow.
What's that point, like the tipping point at which you think it makes sense to introduce media mix modeling?
It's when you're spending a significant amount on multiple media channels. Like, you know, it's like when you really are spending on Meta, Google, TikTok, et cetera. And I'd say, you know, it got to be 5 figures on each, if not more. And then, because if not, you're not really scratching the surface anyways. Like it's not going to be this big lift.
You're not maximizing the channel. And so as a result, how do you know what you should pull back on, like from an incrementality point of view?
Well, it's like when I see people like going into site optimization when they're doing like 10 grand a month on their website. I'm like, oh, you're going to optimize and make an extra $100. That seems like a great use of your time. Like, it's like you don't want to be optimizing when you're not driving enough, you know, fuel in to actually create an overall lift. Like in the beginning, when you're building a business, it's like you got to shove everything in and like just go for brute force. And then you start tweaking.
I'm totally with you. I'm a huge believer in first things first. And to be honest, a lot of people come to me and are like, oh, I'm just out of school. I think I want to go into e-commerce. And I'm like, don't go into e-commerce. Go into content. Be an expert and be passionate about something and create a following.
Yeah.
If you can create a following, I guarantee you will have a business. You will be able to sell them something.
I also believe, like, I think there's this sex appeal to entrepreneurship that like there's a cost that nobody wants to admit to. And it's like, when you're first out of school, depending on what you've already experienced, like getting a job is not the worst. Go learn on someone else's dime. Like technically when I built the activewear brand, I was hired by Science, the incubator that launched Dollar Shave Club and Liquid Death and all that.
Yeah.
They hired me to work with their portfolio companies. And we together launched this activewear brand, but I was an employee with some small piece of equity. Like there was nothing wrong with that though. They also had raised $2 million for that business that I got to go carte blanche spend on a bunch of things. Like that 20 grand to send out a bunch of activewear didn't come out of my pocket. We had funding for it. And so, and that I didn't get to finish that 20 grand turned into 1.2 million in sales within a month and a half. So like, it was like, oh yeah, that worked.
That worked. We're happy with that. We're happy with that ROI. There's another acronym.
But back to like, that's where you get the chops. So like the learning side too, I think is super important.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we go back to attribution in a second? You talked about how you hate it. I sort of again, we have this love language around all of these things, but you know, I find like from the attribution perspective, are we over engineering it? Like we create all of these models, we're trying to allocate, points of credit to these various channels, and then maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But how often, for the people that you see using it and doing it well, there's always a question too, how often should that change and optimize?
I've never seen someone doing it well because it's not real. It's a fallacy. It's the same. I think I'm going to mention, I like this metaphor too. It's like, we all listen to economists on where the economy is going. And I think economists are right like 23% of the time or something ridiculous. Yeah. It's like my favorite recent line is like, economists have predicted 25 of the last 3 recessions. Like, and it's the same thing. Like people seek certainty when it doesn't exist. And it's just, that is attribution in a nutshell. It's like we're looking for a science so that we can either justify it to a board or to a CEO or to ourselves. And the truth is, there's no way of knowing all the different things that make someone buy something. It goes back to some of this has to be, I am confident that we're reaching the right people and we have a good product and they're going to buy it when they see it.
Yeah. Are we profitable? Is our customer file increasing? Is our customer file buying more at higher frequency? And is our top line growing at the same time? If all those things are moving in the right direction, your marketing's working. You can micro optimize. And if you're big enough, you can maybe like start to test like, is this spend totally necessary or are these 3 things enough? Do I need the 4th thing and the 5th thing?
Yep.
So it's a good segue into the algos because there's also, I think, a philosophy of like, hey, the algos are smarter. They could be smarter than us as marketers, right? Because they have all of this data that they're operating around. And, if we feed the algorithms are going to effectively take us to the promised land of the customer.
Yep.
I cannot wait to hear you unpack that.
I mean, there's the black box is scary too. Like you're just going to take but this goes back to, and I've been saying this for years, if you've got a e-commerce brand and you can't make Meta or Google work to drive your business growth, it's not Google or Meta that's the problem. It's you. And so the black box that they've created does work for most businesses. And you have to track it right. You've got to do the right things. This is something that's, kind of passive, but it's true. If you're not doing good email nurturing, you're not using SMS, then it's not going to work well because you have to nurture those customers too to actually get them to convert. And you're competing against people that are doing all these things right. That's where the competition is. And so you do have to have the right strategies to convert these customers and actually bring in business. And you have to have decent margins and you have to have a product that's competitive and that's, enticing. All these things matter. It's not, and I think people forget that. And when I hear people say, oh yeah, we couldn't get TikTok or we couldn't get Meta to work for us, I'm like, what did you do wrong? It's like,
something's not passing the sniff test.
Yeah, you have boring content maybe.
And this is the problem with our industry is it's easy to use these platforms, but it takes experts to actually do it right. And so you've got 90,000 digital agencies in the US and 99% of them are horrible. And so you get a lot of people that go throw money at these guys and don't actually know. And again, I'm talking about just the best practices, basics that if you do those, you should be all right with a good business.
And this is fascinating. You've we unpacked before, it's very easy to it's very easy to start a business. It's very like Shopify made it so I can like start a business. I could wake up, like even like the executives say like I could have an idea in the morning and I can have a business by the afternoon. I mean, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And I think it might have started with The Social Network, the movie about Facebook, that everybody's like, I'm going to drop out of school and start a company too. Like, I don't remember entrepreneurship. I remember like it being a nerdy thing in the 2010s, the 2000s, not like when I was in college and stuff. Like, it was like, I liked it. I liked the idea of starting a business, but like, it wasn't popular. What was popular was going into banking. I graduated in 2008. Everybody wanted to go into investment banking. Oops. Or real estate. And and so, that trend changed. And I think people forget that like the average entrepreneur does not make a lot of money. Like, and you work a lot harder.
It's a slog.
Yeah. We have our investment fund and, we have 600 clients at Hawke Media. Like I get a lot of visibility into like what entrepreneurs are making. And it's like, it takes a long time to make what they can make a salary today. So it's like, it's a huge trade-off that you have to want.
Yeah. No, for sure. So going back to the algos and I get it, the black box can be scary. Where do you feel like there's that room for the creativity in your marketing in the black box of the algos, specifically more in social, because it's harder in Google and with all the different variations. But people like, oh, your promo marketing is always going to perform better. Of course, people buy when they see sales. Where is the avenues for the storytelling in the algorithmic world?
Yeah, so they don't really conflict, thankfully. Like the algorithm is the targeting side of Meta, not like the creative is whatever you want it to be, and good creative is going to outpace bad creative. So you get plenty of storytelling opportunities. But Reels has really taken off. All the video content you can create, so you can do a lot on social, and the algorithm is just more the targeting piece that you have to worry about and how it's going to allocate. So I don't think that's actually done anything wrong there. When I talk about creative, I don't mean that on the content piece. I mean creative strategies. What I mean is, run your Facebook ads and your Instagram ads and your Google ads and your TikTok ads, and those all are going to hopefully do well for you. And to me, that's the scalable, repeatable marketing that should be 90% of your effort, 90% of your time, 90% of your budget. But with like 10%, it should be high risk, high reward. Let's go try to go viral. Let's go try to do an activation.
The brand building.
Exactly. Yeah. And the brand building when you're young isn't let's go do a Supergirl commercial. It's, let's figure out something that people will talk about, that will create content, that will create lift, that will create trust in what we're doing, that will because to me, the word brand, and it goes back to what we wrote in our book, like the word brand is synonymous with trust. So initially, when you don't have a brand people know about, it comes from third-party validation. So it's finding ways to build trust with your consumers so that when you run ads on all these channels that are scalable, they convert higher because they go, oh, I know these guys. Or they can look at you, or they don't know you, and they go look you up and see all these influencers like you, or you've had a bunch of press, or you've got great reviews, or whatever. That's a huge part of it.
Yeah, and I think what an individual ad's performance misses is that the consumer shopping in all these places, especially digitally. They're going into the store for consideration, and they're coming back and they're researching before and after, and they're listening to their friends on Instagram and TikTok, and they're going to search on Amazon. And so all these things, especially for a high consideration purchase, like for your kids or for your pets, you better be in all those places consistently. And if you start pulling back, then you're not going to be considered.
Yep. And that's the part that I think people miss. They get too in the weeds of their numbers and they pull back.
Yeah. Okay. So we are at like 40 minutes into our show. Erik, what have we not talked about that you think we've got to hit on, as we get to the last couple of minutes here?
I'm trying to think. Again, on this topic, I would say it's more the balance of how to leverage that brand side of things. Like it's again, I think it's like, and it's the fun part of marketing. That's the part that's important too, is like, but like as we sort of discredit the algorithms and the, you know, boring part of marketing, that's what I focus on. That is 90% of what we do. That is where you get the predictability of marketing, which is super important for operating a business. Because what we talk about is like the viral piece. Dollar Shave Club's a good example. They got 50,000 customers in the first week from their viral video that everybody knows.
Right.
About.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it took them 2 years to get to 100,000. So like that was tough. Now, thankfully, they were able to raise money because of the viral video that I think they raised $10 million right after that video because they were like, this is going to work. But it took a while to figure out that scalable, repeatable piece. And so, and to be clear, Dollar Shave Club, when they sold to Unilever, was doing 200 million in revenue and 300 million in expenses.
Yeah, exactly.
It was expensive.
You couldn't start that business today.
That CAC to LTV did not track.
And that has to be the fastest growing e-com company with the biggest viral video of all time.
Right.
And you wouldn't want that business today. So let's just be clear on the people that go viral and how that works out versus the incremental, take, you know, Movement watches or blenders or Pura Vida, where they did it way more methodically. And they all had great, by the way, they all made similar money to Dollar Shave Club's founder. It was not the valuation, but they owned a lot more of their business. Movement watches, they never raised money. They were bootstrapped. And so but they did it methodically with these algorithms. And they also did it at a time where you could just look at ROAS and print money. It got harder. It got more competitive. It got more expensive. And so now you have to do things right to compete. But if you do things right, it is still very competitive. You can still very much grow businesses.
Yeah. One thing we haven't talked about in all this that I'm curious and get your feedback on, both of you, is just the notion of skills, where skills should live. And I think a lot of brands are like, should we be outsourcing for this? Should we insource for this? Yep. Digital marketing talent is impossible to find.
Yep. So 2 things there. One, the answer is any binary answer is wrong. It's meaning like it shouldn't be in-house and it shouldn't be outsourced. It should be both. It's a complement to each other. There's reasons to do both. And when you're first starting out, it's probably outsourced because the chances of you attracting a great internal marketer versus a good agency is slim to none. And then over time, you will be able to bring someone good in-house that can help manage that agency. And you want the outside perspective and the skill sets an agency can have, but you want the in-house person that's fully dedicated. Like the answer is both. And, you know, it's also to your point, like attracting great talent in-house is really hard. And that was the thesis behind starting Hawke. Was I was working with a manufacturer in East LA that was he tells everybody, it was a $500 million a year business. And, you know, he was like, I want to build my digital team. He hired me first as a consultant. That was really the start of Hawke Media, was this guy hiring me for that. And I'm like calling friends in the business being like, this guy will pay you double market salary. You just have to come out to Commerce, California, which is, if you're in LA, it's like, it's an industrial area east of LA.
Yeah.
And literally had friends, double the salary. They're like, I'm not going there. I'm not driving 45 minutes each way every day. Like, screw that. And this is we're not talking like, and so I went, wow. And this is for a company that could pay well. Imagine you have to pay market. You're not attracting people unless you're the next, you know, high-flying startup. Like, you're probably not getting the sexiest marketers out there. And so you do need that partner too.
Yeah.
No,
we had a good question on B2B. Do you think there's anything different in what we've been saying today that's like B2B versus B2C?
No, I think that's a really good question, because people forget that you're not never marketing to a business. There is no business to business marketing. You're marketing to an individual at that business. So the messaging, like you're getting a CMO to buy your product. You're getting a CFO. You're getting a whatever it is, an account manager. You're targeting a person. So most of the tactics are the same. The best marketing channels we've seen for B2B are still Instagram and Google, and not LinkedIn, because people do business on LinkedIn. I like LinkedIn. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a great content platform. We're on it right now. Like, it's a great platform. But from an advertising perspective, they still get beat by Meta for business marketing.
Wow. Yeah. I think that is news to a lot of people, and I think it'll be interesting for people in the audience. People still buy from people. All the mechanics and blocking and tackling are still the same. Your customer still has a journey. Customer still has a decision-making criteria. How do you do that? And so it's interesting. We had a marketplace question. Miles Thomas says, how do you market if your main sales channel is a marketplace?
this is a fun question because it depends what you're selling. And so you really think about all the different marketing channels as think about the context in which someone's receiving your advertisement. So if it's Meta, so Facebook or Instagram, people are just sitting there scrolling bored. That's all you do on those platforms. Which is why it's a great marketing platform, because I'm basically saying, show me something interesting. That's why it works for B2B or B2C. I'm still, whether I'm an executive at a company in terms of your target profile, or I'm, Erik that likes to snowboard or, exercise, like you still want to target me to a time when you can get my attention. And I'm not doing anything busy if I'm on Facebook or Instagram. So that's the context there to create new demand, because I'm not looking for what you're doing and you can get my attention. On the other side, you think about Google. Google's a great platform when it's like, I serve a need that you have that has a time factor. Like, I need this right now. You can answer my problem. So that's the context with Google, why that works well. What doesn't work well on Google is lifestyle or something that I'm not going to know I need, that you need to introduce new demand. We just got the answer. So on Meta, when it comes to creating new demand for like apparel or for a product, that's probably going to be the best channel to market that. Marketplaces are tougher because again, I don't know your business, but the problem with marketplaces is you have way lower margins. You're just a middleman. So you kind of have to find ways to drive a better viral loop so that they're buying a bunch of things. So you can make the fact that they can buy apparel from this company and this company and this company, you can get a higher order value, a higher lifetime value. You have to have that. And you need to have other ways that drive that aren't just buying media. Because again, the margins you're competing with that other people are buying media, a good apparel company on their own should have, 70, 80% gross margins direct. And as a marketplace, unless you've done something amazing, you probably don't.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I think people miss about marketplaces is that like 60, 70% of the searches, depending on the category, are unbranded. And so people are just looking to solve problems. And so I think if your products are up on the marketplace, they better be tuned to a pain point that a buyer is having or some kind of goal a buyer is having. You're not really brand building per se at the intro side of it. Right.
And that's why Google's good once you've built a name for a brand. I'm saying for apparel, because now we know what we're talking about. For apparel, Google's great once you've built the brand, and you want to capture the people that are like, I don't remember what this brand is, like, it's a fashion brand in New York or whatever. And I'm going to find out, like, you want to show up. But what's funny is like, nobody Googles t-shirt and buys a t-shirt. Like, nobody has ever gone to Google a t-shirt. Like, and I see so many fashion brands doing stuff like that. TikTok also is becoming really interesting on that.
So important.
And let me just explain the difference between TikTok and Instagram real quick, because let's take the geopolitics out of it. But Instagram, you have this scrolling habit that you have on TikTok. It's the same thing, especially in Reels. But on Instagram, it was built off your social graph, who you like, who you follow, like, the people that you're connected to. TikTok doesn't matter who you follow. You on the For You page, which is what most people sit on,
you're
seeing all the random stuff that their algorithm decides you want to see based on what you pause on. And they're always constantly testing, oh, you're interested in, for me, snowboarding now. Oh, you want to see flying videos and pilots now. Oh, now you like comedy.
Right.
That. So as they build out their advertising algorithm, TikTok's ability to show ads to people randomly, people are way more willing to see random content on TikTok because it's what it's trained them.
They've been trained to do it and trust it, right? Because it's actually
TikTok hasn't completely surpassed Instagram for advertising is they're just still building out that ad product. If they do it right, the context there is going to outpace.
Yeah. Well, and now you've got the whole reverse image search happening too, right? Where imagery is becoming so important, product discovery, Amazon's built it right into the search where I can take a picture and it's either going to show me. So I think there's it's interesting to see how that will evolve and change too in discovery.
Yep.
No, for sure.
All right. Well, like I said, we could probably talk about this forever. Erik, I really am bummed I'm not going to Cannes now and to your barbecue.
There's still time.
There's still time.
There's still time.
Exactly. But yeah, so I think we're going to pause for a bit. We're going to bring on our resident expert, Nick Kaplan, for Kaplan's Corner. And then we'll have you back, Erik, if you want to show us, any new dance moves you've acquired over the past.
Which you're going to need in France.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to hit those clubs.
I got to look it up. Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. So we've got Nick here with Kaplan's Corner, who is going to unpack a couple of things for us at Commerce Next. You guys have always asked us, what shows do you go to? What do you hear about? So Nick, we're going to intro you here and then you're going to drop it down for us.
Patty Tanager, the caddy manager. Yeah, it rhymes. Big whoop. Want to fight about it?
Oh, man. Welcome to Kaplan's Corner.
Love
Another
it.
amazing guest, guys. That was a really interesting series of topics. Fun fact, my wife is from LA. I love LA. Commerce, California, not so much. But number one reason people purchase, I thought about this, price. And number two reason people purchase in their decision-making, trust. So great segment.
There we go.
Loved it. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Nick Kaplan, Kaplan's Corner. This is a segment where they hand me the mic. Yep, that's it. Totally raw, totally unscripted, crazy. I know.
Always good.
But,
always well dressed, though. Always.
I feel like I've brought my level down a bit because I've got to make Rick look good. But we're here. It's good.
Oh.
You never want to show up the host. But speaking of the host, our office, the host and me, is 10 minutes away from the venue where Commerce Next was this week. And yes, Commerce Next was this week. And it was 3 days for the first time, not 2. And we have talked about attending shows, building brand. And, thinking back to the segment with Erik, brand is trust. You are your brand, and getting out there and selling your brand is important, but learning is important too. But for those of you that couldn't be there, I have a little segment I'm going to do for you about seen and heard at Commerce Next. So first, give myself a little LinkedIn plug today, writing a bit about enter the Renaissance CFO. Tons of topics being discussed, but this one was a big one. The CFO was at Commerce Next. I went to a dinner one night. I will not name the brand, but a very large luxury brand, I sat across from the CFO, and it was his first time at an event like this. And it was really interesting to see why he was there, what he thought, and how he's going to keep coming. I think it's emblematic of the role the CFO is taking on in the current commerce companies. It's expanding as the CEO looks further outside the company, deals with investors, board, capital, and strategy, and it's super interesting. Number 2, the age of efficiency has truly arrived. Many conversations around the efficiency of spend, cash, the CFO's involvement in decision-making, and less about growth, less about product, far more about let's get the most with what we've got and figure out what we need and then plan a course forward. Super interesting. The big news is there was no big news. People continue to talk about the same things. AI.
Oh,
AI,
bingo. Did it take us this long?
Yes. I think people are looking for, we're an industry that's enthralled with the silver bullet that doesn't exist.
Yes.
And so, as quickly as crypto and the metaverse went away, retail media is still a topic. It's around, but there's really nothing that is so transformational that people are like, wow, this is the next big thing. The next big thing, though, for me was there are too many solutions for far too few problems. Lots of overlap. I think in the days of old, you had a personalization solution in ESP. You had site search. You had a lot of things doing a lot of things. Now you have things doing a lot of things. And as you walk through the show, you see a lot of overlap in solutions. And I thought that was super interesting. One thing people were talking about without a plausible solution, but it all sounds really good, is the cookieless world is upon us. Which is to say there was lots of conversation about first-party data, third-party data, zero-party data, ID resolution, but I think it's definitely something that's in the works, but the deprecation in Q3 of the cookie by Google seems to have people a bit freaked out. But again, it was talked about, not solved.
Right.
RIP, the CDP. I've been a proponent of what is a CDP and why do we actually need it when we could just take a Snowflake or a BigQuery or Redshift database, build it, integrate it, and use it. So I thought that was really apparent here. And then number 7, here's a shocker for you, Mr. Watson. And I go back to our Shopify earnings dumpster fire. It may have not been the best earnings call of all time, but it is Shopify's world and we are living in it. The democratization of the show is so interesting to me. For those of you that go to these trade shows, there's these big booths like, gosh, Microsoft, SAP, there's cities. At Commerce Next, I love the fact that Scott, Veronica, and Alan have decided to give everyone the same size booth. Guess who didn't have the same size booth? Shopify. Shopify was in the back where they belong to go and everyone pay homage and kiss the ring. But it was really interesting that Shopify is everything. As I think we looked at the floor and saw a lot of the apps and solutions really are in the Shopify ecosystem.
But still had their own booth?
They had a section.
Okay.
Less booth, couch. They had a couch. We sat on the couch and said hello. But I think, in terms of AI, it is like the wandering Energizer bunny. It's like still trying to find a landing spot. Everyone's talking about it. I think that what really AI is just fast math and more computing power to be able to type into your computer right now. Tell me something that I need to know, or tell me math that I need to do, or tell me how I probabilistically improve this, and it gets done. I think tomorrow it will have a really interesting application, but today it's not taking any jobs. It is making our life a little bit better, and it continues to be a topic. Speaking of jobs, and I am getting towards the end, team, the workforce is globalizing. And I think, we just talked about this with Erik in terms of onshore, offshore, and what that combination means, but certainly there's a lot of conversation around a worldwide workforce to be able to increase productivity, improve some of the expense line, and diversify the workforce. That was really interesting to me. And last but not least, community counts. There is nothing like seeing friends, old and new, hearing the truth about what's happening. It's not good. And just getting out there and seeing the world. So we are seeing, I guess in a month, Rick will be speaking at the Lead. I think Noah and Sonal put on a great conference. For those of you that are in New York, I highly recommend registering. And, I think that speaking of conferences, I think Erik invited us all to Cannes. So Rick,
we're headed.
Miles together and get out there. I mean, Jess, if you could make it too, that'd be awesome. But I do think attending all these conferences are really important. You learn a lot. And so that is a little bit of what happened in our venture over the far 10 minutes away from the RMW Worldwide Global Headquarters to experience what Commerce Next had to offer. A great show. It was lots of fun. That's a wrap on Kaplan's Corner for the week.
Thank you, Nick. It was a great recap.
Awesome.
And I guess you want to stay on and help us with our dance off?
Yeah, we're excited. We got the man back here, and we're talking about how do you dance in the age of efficiency? I think that means that your dance move have to be more subtle.
Yeah, a little bit. Or you just go big or go home. I'm always.
But you have to get the same output.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for hanging with us. We know this is an extra long show today, but hope you found a lot of value in it. I know I did. And can't wait to have Erik back again in a couple of weeks. Yes. Looking forward to it. Have a great weekend, everybody.
See you next week.
See you later.
Did it go for from Caddyshack?